Hello again. I know that I spoke about this the other day, but since then things have got even stranger. There are 23 members of the cabinet in Britain. These men and women are, in effect, what we mean when we refer to the government. 6 of them, over a quarter, belong to visible minorities. The latest addition is a man who has lately been appointed Secretary of State for Education, Nadim Zahawi, who was born in Baghdad. He left Iraq when he was 9. I am bound to say that I find this slightly odd that somebody whose first language is not English should be in charge of education in Britain. I truly do not think that anybody who was not born into an English-speaking household in Britain can really appreciate all the finer grammatical points and subtle nuances of English, something vital if you're going to be in charge of ensuring that schools teach English correctly. Seriously, I cannot for the life of me see why you would choose an Iraqi for this role rather than an English person. I'm sure that Zahawi is a decent enough fellow as an MP, although of course during the parliamentary expenses scandal he did manage to charge taxpayers for £4,000 worth of electricity used to light the stables in the riding school which he and his wife ran. Mind, I suppose that's a kind of thing which might happen to any of us. Apparently there was only one electricity meter in the house, and it slipped his mind that in addition to the house in which he lived, he also had a riding school as well that he was supplying with electricity. The BBC are keen to call this guy an Iraqi refugee, but there's something a bit funny about this. They say that his family fled Iraq when Saddam Hussein came to power. The problem there is that Saddam Hussein became president in 1979, but Zahawi's family left 3 years earlier in 1976. It's true that Saddam Hussein had a lot of power between 1968 and 79, but not a great increase round about the mid-70s, enough to prompt Nadim Zahawi's family to jump ship like that. I'm not actually sure what kind of refugees they were, because when they arrived in London they were able to send their son to one of the best private schools in London. That's King's College School in Wimbledon. Fees there are currently about £20,000 a year. So I think maybe there's slightly more about the story of being a refugee than has been reported by the BBC. I suppose the question I'm really asking is this. In Germany, there are 15 members of the cabinet, and every single one of them is a white German of German origin. Quite right too. The same applies to every other country in Europe. In Britain alone is there what looks like a determination to reduce the number of white British people in the government and replace them with Iraqis, Indians and Pakistanis. Why is this? The percentage of visible minorities in the cabinet jumped at the last reshuffle from a fifth to over a quarter, and I suspect it will not be long before it reaches half. Is this sheer chance, or is it part of some plan about which the rest of us know nothing? Why don't other European countries feel the same need to reduce the numbers of their own people in the government? As I said the other day, I cannot persuade myself that somebody who came to the country as an immigrant can feel the same loyalty towards and attachment to the country as those born here in families which have connections to Britain going back centuries. The Minister of State at the Cabinet Office, for example, is Alok Sharma, who was born in India and didn't leave that country until he was 5. Some of these people come from families which have no particular attachment to any country as far as I can see. Priti Patel's parents are from Uganda, but her grandparents are from India. Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor of the Exchequer's parents, were born in Tanzania, but their parents were born in the Punjab. In other words, they come from families that have hopped about from one country to another each generation, and I suspect that has the effect of not giving them a particular attachment either to India, Uganda, Tanzania or Britain. I honestly don't think that people from such families can appreciate the love of an English person for England, because their own families have been restless wanderers, living first in one continent and then another, from Asia to Africa and then on to Europe. They have no real roots in Britain any more than their parents did in Africa or their grandparents in India. I consider this an important point because when such a person, Priti Patel I'm thinking of, the Home Secretary, is in charge of immigration, her perspective on the matter simply will not be the same as somebody whose family has lived for centuries in the same country. I really don't know why Britain alone seems to want their government to consist of over a quarter of people whose families drift around the world in this way, adopting and then abandoning countries every generation or so. I wonder why no other country in Europe is doing so, only the British.